Hi everybody, this video is about configuring JAWS. My name is Amanda Thompson with Allied Instructional Services, and we're going to look at some of the different settings that you might want to have enabled or not when starting out with JAWS on a new computer with a new device or with a new student. And it's important to know that when you first install JAWS, you'll need to take some time either by yourself or with your student going through the different settings to make sure everything is set up correctly, especially if you're on a laptop or you're on a keyboard that does not have the insert key, because it's going to be really important to change some settings so that the student can use it and you're not spending the first few lessons trying to figure out what in the world is going on. So one of the first settings that you might want to consider changing is to have JAWS run in the system tray. Some benefits for this are that it will not be at the bottom on the taskbar where your open apps or your open software are, so you won't have that getting in the way. And then instead of having to possibly Alt Tab through a bunch of different open software, you can just hit your caps lock J or your insert J to open the JAWS menu. And so to enable running JAWS from the system tray, you would open JAWS and the basic settings and click the Run JAWS from System Tray button, which right now in JAWS 2020 is on the right side of the screen of the basic settings and on the third checkbox down. So, like I said before, running JAWS from the system tray is just a little benefit to make accessing it easier with just one keyboard command rather than hitting Alt Tab and going through a variety of them. So before we move on to the next JAWS setting that you might want to change, we need to talk a little bit about modifier keys. Modifier keys are those keys on a keyboard that change the action of another key. So an example would be the Shift key. It makes lowercase letters capital, Control key, the Alt key, and Function key. So initially, when by default, JAWS uses the Insert key, but you can enable laptop mode and change it to the caps lock key. So obviously on a laptop, you're probably going to want to enable laptop mode because the insert key is going to be in a variety of places. There's no standard place to put the insert key on a laptop specifically. So just by enabling the laptop mode in general, the student can just get used to using caps lock and then can generalize between using a desktop and laptop for that. Or you can just if the laptop has an insert key, you can keep it as insert and mark it with a tactile marker. So enabling laptop mode, we'll use the caps lock key. And to do that, you open those JAWS basic settings and the keyboard layout is on the right side of the screen. And there's a drop down menu. You can navigate with the arrow keys for desktop, laptop, or Kinesis. So the default is desktop, which is the standard laptop keyboard, or I'm sorry, standard desktop keyboard that you might find USB or connected to any desktop. Then the laptop uses the caps lock key, and then you have the Kinesis layout. And Kinesis keyboards are usually separated ergonomically between the left and the right hand. Those are not keyboards that we use very frequently, so it's not a setting that you're probably going to use very often, but it is an option on there. Then we need to look at some verbosity settings inside JAWS. So tutor messages are messages from control or dialog boxes, and JAWS can be turned off, have those settings turned off for menu and control help, to announce menu and control help, or to announce just custom messages only. And so depending on the verbosity settings, you might change that. In general, my students keep theirs on announce menu and control help. Another basic setting is the access key support, and that's going to read menus and dialog boxes. So when you're in a menu or a dialog box, if that's turned off, you can press the 5 on the number pad to access that. You can have it speak all of those, speak only the menus, or speak only the dialogue. So speak all is going to be the most verbose, and then speak menus and speak dialogues are going to be less verbose, and then obviously off is not at all. Since we're talking about JAWS's verbosity settings, it's important to note here that to temporarily silence JAWS, you can press that control button at any time. To silence it until you're ready to hear it, which is called speech on demand, you would press the caps lock space or the insert space and then S. So caps lock space and then S, or insert space and S. And then to exit JAWS, depending on how you've got it configured, if you're running JAWS in the systems tray, you would press caps lock J and then press Alt F4 to close it, or you would Alt Tab until you get to the JAWS software and then press Alt F4 to close it. So some other basic settings that are here are the option to prompt you to confirm you're exiting JAWS. I try to have my students keep that enabled because sometimes um, when learning how to use keyboard commands, they may press one to close it on accident, and the prompt will alert them that that's about to happen before it does it automatically. And you can check to have automatic notifications of updates happen, which is useful because it's important to keep JAWS up to date so that you're getting the most benefit from the software. And so I usually have my students keep that checked as well. And then you have the option for the virtual viewer on screen, and that is going to give a little text box with print messages in it that are being read or spoken auditorily to the user. So if your user is screen sharing with you, you can see those alerts on the screen if you're doing like a screen share virtually, or if you are assisting them and they're using earbuds or headphones, you can see those messages on the screen too. And finally, you have the option to start JAWS when the computer starts. And so that would be enacted by pressing the automatically start JAWS button, and then that brings up a second window that has checkboxes for starting JAWS on the logon screen and starting JAWS for all users. And then you can have it specifically for this user, never with a drop down box of or always. And so you would hit OK if you're changing any settings there so that they save, and then you would go on from there. So those are just some of those very basic settings that are going to be important to think about and then either check or uncheck so that JAWS is running the way that you want it when you're starting instruction. If you have a laptop user and your JAWS has not been enabled for laptop mode, then even starting any basic JAWS instruction is going to be nearly impossible until you've worked through that. And if you have a student right now who's learning virtually and say IT has installed JAWS and the student picked up the computer or they dropped the computer off at their home and it wasn't set up to run correctly, then you're probably going to have to spend some time with the student working through these settings. And it can get very frustrating for everybody. And when we're just starting to teach JAWS, it's important that the buy-in is high and that the reward is high so that the student is more motivated to learn to use the software and be independent with it. So hopefully this helps you get started on the right track.